I work night shifts, and my job requires me to stay alert and focused, which can be mentally and physically exhausting. For most people, work is simply a way to earn a living or advance in their careers. For me, night work is also a lifestyle, a rhythm that I've had to adapt to. I used to think I could handle everything, but only after countless long nights and lonely lunches at 2 a.m. did I truly realize how different my life was compared to the average person. I am not a perfectionist, but I am meticulous and detail-oriented, especially when it comes to time and precision. Night shifts can be unpredictable. Some shifts stretch continuously with no breaks, forcing me to make the most of every single minute. A small distraction can reduce productivity, leaving me frustrated and tense. My lunch hour, a concept that may sound strange, usually falls around 2 a.m. It's not because I want to eat at that hour, but because the night shift dictates it. I only have 30 minutes to eat, and this brief window is more precious to me than almost anything else during a shift. In these moments, I need a meal that is exactly what I want, quick and uninterrupted, so I can recharge and continue working efficiently. I have always valued preparation and precision. Everything must be planned carefully: timing, food, eating method, and sometimes even how the meal is presented, if I have a little extra time. This may seem extreme, but for someone working nights like me, this small sense of control is the only thing keeping me calm and focused. However, I can't handle everything on my own. I'm lucky to have a girlfriend who is always attentive, always willing to support and care for me in the smallest ways. She knows I work nights, knows my unusual lunch schedule, and consistently tries to bring my meal on time, prepared just the way I like it. Her thoughtfulness warms me, makes me feel lucky, but at the same time, it opens the door to a series of challenges and stress I hadn't anticipated. Night shifts have their own rhythm, the hum of machinery, artificial lighting, the quiet stillness of midnight, and my 30-minute lunch break, which is the only break in the whole shift. I can't take a longer rest, and I can't skip the meal without risking fatigue or losing focus. That's why any small disruption during this break, no matter how much it can, leave me feeling frustrated and under pressure. This is exactly why the story of my lunch, brought by my girlfriend, is so significant. It's not just about the food. It's about feeling cared for, nurtured, and respecting my personal time. But things are never simple, and it's these tiny details that are the breeding ground for tension, conflict, and raw emotions. I met my girlfriend about 3 years ago, during a time when my life was completely consumed by work. I was exhausted, juggling night shifts and long hours, and I rarely had the energy or motivation to socialize. Meeting her felt like a breath of fresh air. I remember being struck by how genuine and thoughtful she was. Unlike others I had met, she didn't try to impress me with flashy gestures or grand words. Instead, she showed care in small, meaningful ways, and that immediately resonated with me. Over time, we became closer. Our relationship grew steadily, built on trust, understanding, and shared patience. She knew about my night work from the very beginning and never complained about my odd schedule. She adapted, learned the rhythm of my life, and made her own adjustments so that we could spend even small amounts of time together. Even though my schedule was unconventional, she found ways to make me feel loved and supported. One of the earliest things that stood out about her was her attention to detail. She noticed the little things I liked and disliked, the foods I preferred, and even how I ate during my limited lunch breaks. She began to bring me meals to work, almost instinctively, understanding that it was not just about hunger, it was about comfort and the feeling of being cared for during lonely, late-night hours. Her gestures weren't always perfect, of course. Sometimes she would pick the wrong items, or the food wouldn't be exactly how I liked it. But the intent mattered more than the execution. Even a small act like leaving a cup of hot coffee on my desk while I worked was enough to make me feel appreciated and remembered. Over the years, these small acts of kindness became a subtle language of love between us. What I admire most about her is her patience and empathy. She has an innate ability to sense my moods. She knows when I am tired, when I am stressed, and when I need someone to simply be there without judgment. And even though my work sometimes makes me irritable, especially when things don't go as planned, she seldom responds with frustration. Instead, she adjusts, accommodates, and tries to make life a little easier for me, even in ways that often go unnoticed by anyone else. Despite the unconventional hours and the stress of my job, our relationship has been steadily growing stronger. We have built a rhythm, a mutual understanding that doesn't require grand declarations of love every day. It's in the simple things, sharing a brief conversation before I head back to my desk, texting her when I finish a shift, or exchanging small gestures of care in the middle of the night. But like all relationships, ours isn't without tension. The challenges of my night shifts, combined with my personality meticulous, detail-oriented, sometimes impatient, sometimes clash with her best intentions. She tries her best, yet small mistakes or overlooked details can trigger frustration on my part, even when I know she means well. And this is where the emotional complexity of our relationship truly begins to reveal itself. Because my reaction to her mistakes often brings guilt, doubt, and self-reflection into the mix. Even so, I have to admit, knowing she has consistently made an effort to understand and support me makes me feel both grateful and conflicted. Grateful because I know her actions come from love. Conflicted because I struggle to balance my high expectations with compassion. Every day is a delicate dance of appreciation, irritation, and mutual learning, a process that has shaped not only our relationship, but also my understanding of patience, empathy, and love itself. In these quiet, late-night hours, as I sit down to eat the meals she thoughtfully brings, I am reminded that our relationship is built on small, consistent acts of care. The late-night sandwiches, the carefully packed snacks, the occasional note of encouragement, these are the threads that bind us. And even though tension can arise when things don't go perfectly, the foundation of trust and understanding allows us to weather these minor storms without breaking the bond we have nurtured over years. One of the things that makes our relationship unique is the way she shows care through small, deliberate habits. Over time, she developed a routine of preparing or ordering food for me during my night shifts. It wasn't just about keeping me fed, it was about providing comfort, maintaining connection, and respecting the unusual rhythm of my life. She knows that my lunch break is extremely short, so she plans everything with that in mind. The meals she brings are usually ready to eat, packaged neatly, and sometimes accompanied by little extras like a note or a small snack. It's a ritual that has become part of our relationship, silent language of love and understanding. Sometimes she would go out to pick up food herself, choosing items that she knows I like. Other times, she would call ahead to a fast food restaurant, placing the order in advance to ensure I get it on time. She's careful about details, but, like all humans, she sometimes makes mistakes. A sauce might spill, an order might be slightly off, or a favorite topping might be forgotten. Even so, the thought behind her actions always outweighs the errors themselves. I can't overstate how much it means to me to see her outside in the cold night air, walking briskly to get my meal, sometimes juggling multiple items and still managing to smile at me when she arrives. It's not grand gestures or expensive gifts, it's the consistency, effort, and thoughtfulness that touches me the most. These lunches have become a ritual of connection, even when I'm focused on work. Just seeing her with a small bag of food in her hands reminds me that I'm not alone in this routine. She understands the fatigue and stress of night work, and she subtly tries to ease it through these gestures. Sometimes, when she's feeling playful, she adds a small treat or a funny note to make me laugh during my brief break. Other times, she'll quietly leave the food and give me space, sensing that I need peace and focus more than conversation. Despite the care she takes, there are moments when things go wrong. A burger might be slightly different than I expected. A drink might be warm instead of cold, or a portion of fries might have gone missing. When this happens, I feel an immediate tension rising inside me. My 30-minute window feels even more limited, and the small imperfections suddenly seem magnified. I know logically that she did her best, but my need for efficiency and precision clashes with her human errors. These moments, though minor, are where the complexity of our relationship comes to life. It's not that I don't appreciate her effort, I do, deeply, but my reaction is sometimes harsher than I intend. I feel frustration, impatience, and guilt all at once. Seeing her face fall or noticing her eyes glisten with unshed tears only intensifies the emotional weight of the situation. Yet, even with these small conflicts, the lunches are more than just meals. They are a manifestation of care, love, and connection. They remind me that our bond isn't built on perfection, but on intentionality, empathy, and shared understanding. Every burger, every bag of fries, every hot drink she brings carries a message. I am thinking of you. I care about your well-being, even during the loneliest hours of the night, and I cannot ignore that message. It penetrates through the fatigue and frustration, reminding me of why we are together and what truly matters. These moments, small as they may seem, are the threads that hold the fabric of our relationship together. Even when mistakes happen, the rituals remain a constant reminder of her dedication and love, and of the intricate balance we must navigate between care and expectation. Despite all the care she puts into these meals, mistakes happen. Sometimes they are small, like a missing packet of sauce or a slightly soggy fry, but in the context of my precious 30-minute lunch break, they feel magnified. Other times, the errors are more noticeable. The McNuggets I've been craving come in a smaller portion than expected, or the burger she picked up has onions I cannot eat. When I notice these mistakes, an immediate tension rises inside me. My mind races through a list of what could have been done differently. Could she have checked the bag more carefully? Could the order have been double-checked before leaving? My thoughts spiral quickly, and before I realize it, I'm gripped by frustration. I know logically that these reactions are disproportionate. She is trying her best, and she knows exactly how hard it is for me to work nights. Yet the combination of limited time, physical hunger, and mental fatigue makes patience feel like a scarce resource. I want to express my concern, but the words often come out sharper than intended. One night, for example, she arrived with a bag of food that looked perfect at first glance, but as I opened it, I noticed the fries were cold, the sauce had spilled, and the burger contained onions. I had only 20 minutes left to eat. My initial reaction was a mix of disbelief and irritation. "Why didn't you check?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Her face immediately fell. Her eyes welled up with tears, and a soft, shaky "I'm sorry" escaped her lips. I felt a knot in my stomach, part guilt, part lingering frustration. I wanted to comfort her, to reassure her that it was okay, but at the same time, the clock was ticking, and I had to eat quickly to keep up with my work schedule. I sat there, trying to balance my anger and my conscience, eating fries that had gone cold and nuggets without sauce. My mind torn between practicality and empathy. These scenarios repeated themselves over time. Sometimes I was the driver when she picked up food from a crowded fast food chain. I would pull up to the window, feeling the pressure of the line behind me, and still carefully check every bag. I didn't mind taking the extra time for accuracy, but my inattention grew with each small error she hadn't caught beforehand. She knew the routine, but she was human, and mistakes slipped through. Each time this happened, she would often cry a little, and each time I would feel a mix of guilt and irritation. I understood her effort. I valued it immensely. But my mind was also focused on eating efficiently, staying on schedule, and avoiding further disruptions. I knew that my reactions were harsh, and I hated that I sometimes let frustration overpower appreciation. The conflict between us wasn't about food itself, it was about expectations, timing, and emotional pressure. I expected perfection in a context where perfection was difficult to achieve. She gave her best, yet the small imperfections became flashpoints for tension. I began to recognize a pattern. My need for control and efficiency clashed with her human attempts at care, and neither of us was truly at fault. After these experiences, I often spent my lunch break in silent reflection, eating quickly, processing the emotions of both frustration and guilt. I would ask myself, am I being too harsh? Am I letting minor errors overshadow her love and effort? These reflections were mentally exhausting but necessary. They forced me to consider how my reactions affected her emotionally, and how my desire for efficiency sometimes compromised our connection. Despite these challenges, there were small moments of tenderness that reminded me of why I valued her presence so much. Even when a mistake occurred, she would laugh nervously, apologize sincerely, and try to make it right. Her commitment to caring for me never wavered, and in those moments, I was reminded that our relationship wasn't about flawless execution. It was about love, understanding, and patience, even in the face of imperfection. These lunches, fraught with small mistakes and emotional tension, became an emotional battlefield and a lesson at the same time. They tested my patience, my empathy, and my ability to communicate without hurting her. They also revealed the depth of our bond, a connection strong enough to survive minor conflicts, yet fragile enough that a single misstep could stir tears, guilt, and self-reflection. After countless nights filled with the cycle of careful preparation, small mistakes, frustration, and guilt, I began to notice a shift in myself. These lunches, which once felt like battlegrounds of efficiency versus imperfection, slowly became moments of reflection, opportunities to examine not just the food, but the relationship, my emotions, and my priorities. I started to realize that my initial reactions, irritation, even sharp words, were largely influenced by my own stress, fatigue, and attachment to control. The mistakes she made were minor, trivial even, yet in my mind they became symbols of disruption to my tightly scheduled world. The deeper truth I came to understand was that her intent was never flawed. It was perfect in its own way because it came from love. This realization didn't make the frustration disappear immediately. The 30-minute lunch window was still short, the shifts were still exhausting, and mistakes still happened. But my perception began to shift. I found myself asking, do I value the love behind the meal more than the meal itself? Slowly, the answer became clear. The food was secondary. The thought, effort, and care were what truly mattered. I also began to notice the subtle signs of her effort and dedication that I had previously overlooked in moments of irritation. The careful wrapping of the sandwiches, the little extras she would add to make me smile, her willingness to brave long lines or cold nights, these were all acts of constant attention and care. Recognizing this helped me to temper my reactions and respond with more patience and gratitude rather than immediate frustration. Reflection became a daily practice. After finishing my meals, I would often sit quietly, digesting not only the food, but also the emotions that accompanied it. I considered the balance of expectation and empathy, asking myself how I could better communicate my needs without diminishing her effort. I realized that part of being in a loving relationship is managing personal expectations, especially when the other person is consistently acting from a place of care. Over time, small changes occurred. I learned to double-check the bags calmly without letting stress dictate my tone. I started expressing appreciation more openly, even when mistakes occurred, acknowledging her effort before addressing minor issues. She, in turn, grew more mindful of the details she could control, checking orders and planning ahead when possible. Our small rituals became smoother, and our emotional exchanges less fraught with tension. This process of reflection also helped me understand my own patterns of control and perfectionism. I began to see that my need for precision in these meals was not about the food itself, but about my desire to maintain stability and predictability in a chaotic schedule. Recognizing this allowed me to separate my stress from her intentions and to approach our interactions with more clarity and kindness. Ultimately, these late-night lunches taught me that relationships are rarely flawless, and that small imperfections can coexist with deep care and commitment. The journey from frustration to understanding was gradual, marked by repeated experiences of testing, reflection, and growth. By allowing myself to step back, observe my own reactions, and acknowledge her love, I discovered that even the smallest acts of care, like a bag of McNuggets or a carefully packed sandwich can, carry profound meaning when met with awareness and gratitude. By the end of this phase, I no longer viewed these meals as mere tests of efficiency or patience. They became symbols of connection, love, and mutual learning. I understood that perfection was never the goal. Understanding, empathy, and shared effort were what truly sustained our relationship. This emotional growth became the foundation for navigating future conflicts, and it prepared me for the next chapter of our story, where challenges and love intertwine in more complex ways. After countless nights filled with the cycle of careful preparation, small mistakes, frustration, and guilt, I began to notice a shift in myself. These lunches, which once felt like battlegrounds of efficiency versus imperfection, slowly became moments of reflection, opportunities to examine not just the food, but the relationship, my emotions, and my priorities. I started to realize that my initial reactions, irritation, even sharp words, were largely influenced by my own stress, fatigue, and attachment to control. The mistakes she made were minor, trivial even, yet in my mind they became symbols of disruption to my tightly scheduled world. The deeper truth I came to understand was that her intent was never flawed. It was perfect in its own way because it came from love. This realization didn't make the frustration disappear immediately. The 30-minute lunch window was still short, the shifts were still exhausting, and mistakes still happened. But my perception began to shift. I found myself asking, do I value the love behind the meal more than the meal itself? Slowly, the answer became clear. The food was secondary. The thought, effort, and care were what truly mattered. I also began to notice the subtle signs of her effort and dedication that I had previously overlooked in moments of irritation. The careful wrapping of the sandwiches, the little extras she would add to make me smile, her willingness to brave long lines or cold nights, these were all acts of constant attention and care. Recognizing this helped me to temper my reactions and respond with more patience and gratitude rather than immediate frustration. Reflection became a daily practice. After finishing my meals, I would often sit quietly, digesting not only the food but also the emotions that accompanied it. I considered the balance of expectation and empathy, asking myself how I could better communicate my needs without diminishing her effort. I realized that part of being in a loving relationship is managing personal expectations, especially when the other person is consistently acting from a place of care. Over time, small changes occurred. I learned to double-check the bags calmly, without letting stress dictate my tone. I started expressing appreciation more openly, even when mistakes occurred, acknowledging her effort before addressing minor issues. She, in turn, grew more mindful of the details she could control, checking orders and planning ahead when possible. Our small rituals became smoother, and our emotional exchanges less fraught with tension. This process of reflection also helped me understand my own patterns of control and perfectionism. I began to see that my need for precision in these meals was not about the food itself, but about my desire to maintain stability and predictability in a chaotic schedule. Recognizing this allowed me to separate my stress from her intentions, and to approach our interactions with more clarity and kindness. Ultimately, these late-night lunches taught me that relationships are rarely flawless, and that small imperfections can coexist with deep care and commitment. The journey from frustration to understanding was gradual, marked by repeated experiences of testing, reflection, and growth. By allowing myself to step back, observe my own reactions, and acknowledge her love, I discovered that even the smallest acts of care, like a bag of McNuggets or a carefully packed sandwich can, carry profound meaning when met with awareness and gratitude. By the end of this phase, I no longer viewed these meals as mere tests of efficiency or patience. They became symbols of connection, love, and mutual learning. I understood that perfection was never the goal. Understanding, empathy, and shared effort were what truly sustained our relationship. This emotional growth became the foundation for navigating future conflicts, and it prepared me for the next chapter of our story, where challenges and love intertwine in more complex ways. As the weeks went on, the late-night lunch ritual began to reveal not only love and care, but also the fragility of our patience and emotions. There were nights when the pressures of my work combined with minor mistakes in the meal, creating a perfect storm of stress and tension. These were the nights where my internal struggle between frustration and guilt became almost unbearable. One particularly intense night stands out. She had gone through the trouble of calling ahead, placing the order carefully, and navigating a busy drive-through. I watched as she arrived, a mix of fatigue and anticipation on her face. I was eager to eat, knowing my 30-minute lunch window was slipping away. But as I opened the bag, everything seemed slightly off. Fries were cold, the nuggets were missing sauce, and the burger included onions I could not tolerate. I felt a rush of irritation. My first reaction was sharper than usual. "Why didn't you check the bag?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could filter them. Her shoulders dropped instantly, and I could see tears beginning to well in her eyes. It was a moment of raw confrontation, the kind that lays bare both love and tension. I immediately recognized the guilt rising inside me. I hated myself for snapping, for letting my stress dominate the interaction. But at the same time, the pressure of time and exhaustion made it difficult to respond calmly. I was caught in a conflict between the heart and the mind, between appreciation for her effort and the very human desire for efficiency and order. She began to cry softly, apologizing repeatedly, her voice trembling. Seeing her like that, my heart wrenched. I wanted to soothe her, to tell her that it was okay. Yet the limited time I had to eat made it impossible to fully process my emotions. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to fix the situation immediately, while another part wanted to comfort her and acknowledge her effort. That night, I realized that our relationship had entered a new phase. These meals were no longer just symbolic gestures, they had become high-stakes emotional tests, revealing how our love could be strained under pressure. Every small mistake had the power to trigger tears, guilt, or frustration. And our ability to navigate these moments was crucial for sustaining our bond. After a tense pause, I took a deep breath and consciously shifted my perspective. I acknowledged her effort first. "Thank you for bringing this. I know it wasn't easy." Her trembling eased slightly, and we moved on to address the mistakes calmly, finding a solution together. We warmed the fries, separated the onions from the burger, and managed to turn a potentially disastrous lunch into a moment of cooperation and understanding. These nights, however, were not isolated. Similar confrontations happened repeatedly, each one testing our patience, emotional resilience, and communication. I began to reflect deeply on my reactions. Why I allowed minor imperfections to dominate my emotions, and how my high expectations could hurt someone I loved deeply. Through these confrontations, we both learned important lessons. She became more mindful of small details, checking orders carefully and anticipating potential errors. I learned to manage my frustration, to pause before reacting, and to approach each situation with empathy and awareness. Our bond grew stronger not despite these conflicts, but because of how we faced them together. High-stress nights became teaching moments. They showed me the importance of patience, of recognizing intent over execution, and of valuing the love and effort behind every action. They also reminded me that relationships are rarely perfect. They require constant negotiation, emotional awareness, and mutual adaptation. By the end of this phase, I began to see the late-night lunches not as sources of stress, but as opportunities for growth and connection. Every error, every confrontation, every moment of tension became a way to understand each other more deeply, to communicate more clearly, and to reinforce the strength of our love. These challenging nights became the backbone of our relationship, shaping how we would navigate future conflicts and deepening the trust and empathy between us. After many nights of small mistakes, high-stress moments, and emotional confrontations, I began to notice a profound shift in both myself and our relationship. These experiences, while challenging, had become a catalyst for growth, understanding, and connection. I realized that the true significance of her efforts was never in the food itself. The McNuggets, fries, or sandwiches were just symbols of her thoughtfulness, her desire to care for me, and her dedication to our relationship. What mattered most was the intent behind each meal, the love and attention she invested even in small details, and her willingness to face inconvenience or exhaustion just to make me feel supported at the same time. I recognized the importance of emotional regulation. My initial reactions, frustration, sharp words, impatience, were not constructive. They reflected my stress, fatigue, and perfectionism more than anything she had done wrong. By reflecting on my responses, I learned to pause, acknowledge her effort first, and communicate calmly, even when things were not perfect. This shift in perspective reduced tension and allowed both of us to approach these moments with empathy and cooperation. Through repeated challenges, we developed new routines and strategies. I learned to check the orders calmly without showing frustration, and she became more attentive to details she could control, like double-checking toppings or sauces. We started treating mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities to practice patience and understanding, reinforcing the trust and bond between us. These lessons extended beyond the meals themselves. They became metaphors for navigating challenges in our relationship. Life, like my night shifts, is unpredictable and sometimes messy. Mistakes will happen, plans will go awry, and expectations may not always align. What matters is how we respond, how we support each other, and how we prioritize connection over perfection. I also began to appreciate the depth of our partnership. The late-night lunches, once sources of minor stress, became moments of intimacy. Sharing these small rituals allowed us to communicate care and understanding without words. Even a small smile, a gentle gesture, or the act of adjusting a burger's toppings together became a demonstration of love, patience, and teamwork. Over time, these experiences strengthened our relationship. We learned to anticipate each other's needs, to manage expectations, and to handle mistakes with compassion. The emotional tension that once felt overwhelming became a teaching tool, showing us the value of empathy, adaptability, and shared effort. Ultimately, these late-night meals taught me that love is rarely flawless. It's not about perfection or efficiency, it's about commitment, understanding, and growth. Every error, every tense moment, and every meal shared in the middle of the night became a building block for a deeper, more resilient connection. By the end of this section, I no longer viewed these nights as mere tests or challenges. They were a reflection of how love can thrive under imperfection, how relationships can grow through adversity, and how small acts of care like bringing a meal at 2 a.m. can carry profound emotional significance. These lessons would guide us not just through night shifts and cold fries, but through life's larger challenges, shaping a relationship rooted in trust, empathy, and enduring love. After countless nights of late shifts, rushed meals, and emotional tension, I finally understood what these experiences had truly taught me. What began as simple lunches delivered by my girlfriend at 2 a.m. had grown into a profound lesson about love, patience, and the value of small acts of care. I realized that love is not about perfection. It's not about flawless execution or meeting every expectation precisely. True love is about effort, intention, and empathy, even in moments of fatigue, stress, or imperfection. Every meal she brought, every thoughtful gesture, was a reflection of her commitment to our relationship and her desire to make my life a little easier amidst the chaos of night shifts. I also recognized my own growth. I learned to pause before reacting, to reflect on my emotions, and to appreciate intent over outcome. I began valuing her efforts rather than focusing solely on minor mistakes, understanding that frustration often stemmed from my own need for control rather than any real failure on her part. This shift allowed me to respond with patience, kindness, and gratitude, strengthening our connection and deepening our love. The late-night meals became symbols of our bond, small yet meaningful reminders that care and consideration often outweigh grand gestures. Through cold fries, spilled sauces, and missing toppings, we discovered how challenges, no matter how minor, can teach empathy, cooperation, and resilience. Each mistake became an opportunity to communicate, to adjust, and to grow closer rather than drift apart. Looking back, I realized that these experiences prepared us for life's larger challenges. They taught us to navigate imperfections, manage expectations, and value one another's intentions. We learned that love thrives not in flawless moments, but in the messy, human, imperfect ones where patience, understanding, and mutual support are required. Tonight, as I sit down to a meal she has carefully brought, I no longer see it as a test or a source of stress. I see it as a testament to our love, dedication, and shared journey. Each bag of food, each burger or nugget carries the weight of thoughtfulness, patience, and enduring care. It reminds me that the smallest gestures often hold the greatest significance, and that love grows stronger when we honor effort, communicate with empathy, and embrace imperfection. In the end, the story isn't about mistakes or cold fries. It's about human connection, understanding, and the daily acts of love that quietly shape our relationships. It's about learning to navigate life together, celebrating both successes and imperfections, and realizing that patience, compassion, and care are the true measures of love.